Okay, so eBay has been well known for being an auction website and you can buy and resell things on it. But the thing is, though, what are some of the most common problems eBay has and why do they still refuse to do anything about it? Because they want you to believe it's the only way they can do with it. So, eBay is a website where there have been people that have been known to buy an item and then they would want like a full refund. But they don't do it in the sense that the seller is trying to scam the buyer. It's the buyer trying to scam the seller. And this is how they do it. Okay, so for example, say that I sold an item for $60 total. $30 for the item itself, $30 for the shipping. So eBay is gonna take $30 for the shipping. In this case, it's international shipping. The item was $30. So the buyer still paid $60 plus whatever the taxes were, and then the seller takes that money and ships it out. Well, later on, so the seller then gets to keep they get to keep $30 minus whatever their fees were. So go figure that. So in this case, it'd be like, I think it's like $25, $26 you get to keep. So anyways, eBay then steps in with, then they have this full refund policy. The buyer eventually gets the item, and then the buyer then says to the seller that he wants a full refund because the item was damaged. It was not as described. Okay, so either there's a couple things that could happen, but let's just talk about the most common situations that people have talked about why eBay is a scam. If eBay decides to give the buyer a full refund, that means that the seller is losing money, and it's not exactly the $60 that they have. Let me explain. So in the past, I've dealt with this before, where I have to give it's never a partial refund. They want a full refund. Honestly, a partial refund would make more sense if you are giving them their money back for the item itself, but because you're not shipping the item back. But in some cases, they don't want that because they feel like they want the whole thing plus the item they just paid for. Even though most of the time, if we're going the scam route, it's probably still in really good condition, and they're just looking to get it for free because they found some stupid illegal loophole, which, mind you, is illegal and it's fraud. You can't do this to people and just expect to get away with it. If you can get away with it, then there's something there. That's a class action lawsuit right there, and that's how eBay should be looking at it. But anyways, this is what I've noticed. So if the full refund goes through, the seller gets screwed because what happens is now they're out. So before they had the $60, eBay took $30 for the shipping internationally, and now the buyer wants the $30 back plus another $30 plus he's got the item now, and he doesn't ship it back even though he should. And so what happens is now the buyer is out at this point. If he just tells the buyer that, if the seller then tells the buyer to keep the item, he's still out $30 because he had to give another $30 to the buyer instead of eBay giving back his full refund. So somehow eBay gets away with their, they don't have to pay back their shipping, even though it should be at this point. Really, it technically should be like return to the seller, return to the sender. So if they want a full refund, then they should pay for the shipping at least. But no, eBay wants the seller to do it, so that's stupid. And not only that, but it's like if you were to go to any other store and say, hey, I want a full refund, they're not going to just let you keep the item and then give you your money back. No. If you go into any store personally, they're going to either want you to prove that you have given them the receipt, they're going to want the item back, and then they might give you your money back, or it might be in store credit because it's their policy. But it sounds a lot more fair than just saying, hey, you keep the item and here's your money back. It's not how it works. You should, because any other store you go into, it would be like, you should be careful with what you buy. Not because you might get scammed, but it's also to prevent you from scamming people. Because again, if people could just get their money back, they would. And keep the item. And that's why eBay is a fail, because going back to what I was saying about the shipping labels, you could be somebody who has to pay back the shipping, have them send the item back. Now it's defective, now it's worth less because somebody damaged it. and now you're gonna have to pay for the shipping again. So at this point, you'd be out $60 because now they want you to pay for another shipping label, and now it goes up to 30, another 30, so it'd be 60 instead of the negative 30 if they kept the item. And you see why eBay is literally screwing people over with the way they have their policies in place, because they basically want to side with buyers because they make them money, and eBay's not refunding whatever percent they take back, maybe some of it, but not all of it, because of, because they don't want to be reliable for it, even though they're the ones that have set up this policy. And I find it strange because eBay has been sued for this very reason, saying that they're misleading people and encouraging theft on eBay. I've even looked into their return policy. Like, for example, as a seller, you could call one of the eBay reps up if you're in that situation with the buyer where he's supposed to send the item back and they haven't even uploaded the tracking number, or they haven't even sent it out yet. It's still stuck in that phase. eBay says that they'll give them 15 days after the return case was opened, and then at the same time, then in some cases they have 35. So if eBay's got multiple deadlines, it's like they don't even know what's going on. So what they want you to believe is you have to, as a seller, because I've called one of the representatives up before and I ask them, I say, hey, I read the fine print. It says that sellers do not have the ability to close a case, but a buyer can, even though they're the ones that opened it. It kind of makes sense because they're the ones that have the item, but the fact that they let them have the ability to call a representative up, and even as a seller, you could call a representative up, talk to somebody, and they say there's nothing a seller could do. But if a buyer was to do it, they could get their money back. They could have the case shut down even before the refund came back. I actually had a representative lie to me before, saying that they couldn't give me a refund because as a seller, you have to wait for that period to close on its own. But they make it so long that you have no other choice. Because the next problem I have is what they do in the meantime. Because what happens is, depending on how much money, including the shipping, it's the full amount. If you have to refund a buyer, they're basically blackmailing you to do it as soon as possible, because what happens next is it's stupid. Depending on how long this goes on for, if it does end up, eBay does end up stepping in and deciding that they're going to get rid of it. If you are trying to sell like other items on eBay, they take that, because mind you, if it's still an open case, there's still a chance that they might side with you, and that means you don't have to refund it, or it could close on its own. But in the meantime, they treat it like you owe them money because they want you to pay it. But that's not just the side effect here. You see, let's say you sell other items. You might notice how eBay buyers can sell can buy an item, they pay for the shipping too, or they give you a little extra money to pay for the shipping labels. Okay. So you go to take that money as your available funds, or funds that are processing, and you can use that to buy shipping labels. Well, if you've got at least one account hold, they put your funds in the negatives to such a point where until you have available funds that are on there, and your funds won't go directly into your bank account until that is on the negatives. Well, what happens is eBay won't even let you print off shipping labels unless you can match that same revenue, because they want you to pay that funding off first. So they want you to pay out-of-pocket costs, even though they have links to your bank accounts to send you payments. And if eBay could just go into your bank account and take it out anyways, which is already stupid as it sounds, I don't know another website where you can, basically you put your bank account information on and they won't let you delete it. You can click delete, it won't delete it. They'll say the only way to delete it is to replace it with another verified email or a bank account that they consider legit. No third party like Chime or Cashapp or anything, something that a lot of people use. Now, it's got to be a real bank account. And even banks are slow. And that's another story, but eBay has this weird policy where they treat everything like it's a social credit score. They can just make up the rules, and if they don't like it. They have complete control. They don't want, and that's just only going to encourage more unethical behavior with the buyers and even eBay itself. Because eBay doesn't give a fuck, because they're not losing money. They're actually making money by stealing money from people. Because they have such a policy in place, a TOS, a terms of service, that it's just there for a disclaimer, so they can say, well, we don't do that. But they do. And they'll try to manipulate people to giving them money back when they should. You could have a buyer right now open up, say whatever they want, and they'll sign with them, even if it's unethical, even if it contradicts their terms of service. There have been times I've had eBay reps tell me that an eBay seller could call them up, or an eBay seller could call them up and say that there's nothing they can do about it. But if it was an eBay buyer, they could step in immediately, even before the seller got his item back, and then they sent the refund, forcing them to close it. And their response to this would say, like say a seller told a representative, say, hey, well, what about the buyer hasn't sent me the item back? They could say, well, they closed the case, they gave them a full refund illegally. But because of their policy, they're going to say it's fair because that's what they want you to believe. And then they turn around and say, well, the buyer's going to have good faith. He'll send the item back. But it's like, no. You don't think that those kind of people, once they already have their money back and your item, you really honestly think they're going to send it back to you if there's no way to track it? Especially if eBay just, every time they close something, like a case, whether it's by manual or it expires on its own, you really honestly think that those kind of people are going to reopen it back up and go after those people? Not really. That's not how it works. I mean, it should, but that's not how it works. So, by default, eBay's lying, and they're being criminals, and I'm going to tell you right now, as a seller, it only makes things more complicated during the process when they decide to get rid of this. So, if anything that I'm saying makes any sense to people that are on eBay, do one of two things. One, do not sell things that are going to possibly be refunded, even if you don't want to refund these people. Don't sell expensive items on eBay. And thirdly, don't sell on eBay if you don't have to. Because eBay, you don't want to take this chance. Even if it doesn't sound like it's that much of a risk, you'd be very surprised how fast this can turn against you, even when it's not your fault. So again, if you have any requests, if you have any questions about like how to get around this, ask me. I will be more than glad to work with you out. But until then, eBay is just a website that used to be really good, but it's just fucked by how the people that have taken control of it and just destroyed it. And you wonder why so many people refuse to use eBay, to the point where even their stocks were dropping at one point.